If anybody knows about the benefits Western civilisation can offer Indigenous people, it's Marsha Langton herself. In the piece that sparked so much wry amusement on the weekend was this revelation about her childhood. Quote, Langton was very young when she realised there was a world she could access beyond her own. Many of my childhood circumstances were unsafe and scary, so I would often go to the library. I learnt that I could borrow books from a very young age and I would take books to my secret places. So, Western civilisation gave her hope in a world that was unsafe and scary. She also attended Aspley High School in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, where she was made a house captain. She has since achieved considerable academic success and respect from a large number of Australians. Having said that, Queensland in the 1960s was not a pleasant place for Indigenous people, and Langton is understandably scarred by the treatment she received as a pioneering Indigenous university student. But two things prevent her or any other Indigenous person's experiences among racist Australians in the 60s and 70s being a logical springboard for an Indigenous voice to Parliament. First, Australians are not as racist as they were back then. The racism of those times have gone the way of flared jeans, Chico rolls and Holden Kingswoods. Second, and this is controversial to admit, Western civilisation, although not perfect, was superior to Indigenous culture at the time of white settlement and remains so now. This is how Oxford ethicist Professor Nigel Biggar explained it on this show a couple of weeks ago.
But you're quite right. I'm quite frank about talking in terms of cultural superiority and inferiority, not because I think that any culture is permanently and absolutely superior to another, but because it seems to me to be common sense that in some respects, at some times, in certain places, a given culture is, in terms of technology or science or medicine or even liberal politics, superior to another.
Too often, this is conflated with actual racism, which Professor Biggar defined as...
It's really important for us to pause and think about what we mean by racism. So racism as the contempt of one people for another, unfortunately, is a universal human vice, and it's disgusting. And there was too much of that in the British Empire. But the most vicious form of racism is that which regards another people as naturally, genetically, biologically inferior, and therefore forever destined to be ruled by another race. So the ideology of white supremacism would be an example of that. But I'm pleased to report that although scientific biological racism did gain traction toward the end of the 19th century, it never displaced the earlier Christian view, which had propelled the movement to abolish slavery and the slave trade throughout the empire in the early 1800s. The Christian view that all human beings are basically equal, regardless of race and regardless of cultural development, under God.
Amen to that. They are also equal under our legal and political systems, equal before the law, and their votes are equal to everyone else's too. Or they will be until this voice to Parliament gets up.